Hey guys, Crypto Sunday, and it's a slightly red week for me. Nothing too much, sort of 1%, about 5,000 quid. This is mostly on the altcoins. Bitcoin is green, as you can see, 101,600. It's still sort of battling and trading blows around this number. Obviously, it was always going to be a bit contentious. Probably the biggest, you know, round number since 10,000, really. So, yeah, it's still hanging around there. I do have one other coin in the green, if you can take a guess. So, yeah, we had the weekly coin shares report. Sort of, we expected this to be fairly green since we know sort of the US Bitcoin ETFs were good. And yeah, 3.85 billion. So obviously there's a few numbers that we don't know about, or I haven't seen a way to find out until we get this report. But yeah, so we had, well, Ethereum pick up 2.5 billion of Bitcoin inflows, but 1.15 billion into the Ethereum ETFs, which is pretty solid. Another outflow out of the multi-asset, which is a bit strange considering all this inflow. You would think sort of people would want to be getting in that as well. 14.1 million out of Solana as well, and an enormous inflow into the XRP ETFs. So these are the Europe ones, I'm guessing. People sort of chasing that upwards, I suppose. It's up like 5x, but not in the last week, and now sort of suddenly inflows come in. And then yeah, some smaller inflows into Binance Coin, I'm guessing 3.3 million, 2.1 million into Litecoin, 5 million into Cardano, 6 million into short Bitcoin. That's no surprise sort of when it's up. A little bit into Chainlink, and 14 million into others again. So a little bit surprising. Country-wise, or had some inflows into Australia, back into positive on Brazil, a little into Canada, slight outflow from Hong Kong and Sweden, but Germany and Switzerland with triple-digit inflows. I'm guessing that might be partly the XRP listed ETFs, but yeah, interesting. And just looking at this week, we're obviously going to have another fairly positive coin shares report, probably slightly less than this week, but still very positive. Had admittedly a 0 day on Wednesday for BlackRock, but sort of other ETFs doing well. Fidelity taking some inflow, so that was still positive, but that was the lowest of the week at 223 million. You sort of had 400, 400, 600 almost, and then a 400 again. So pretty steady, largely into sort of BlackRock. They're getting 300 or 400 million a day, which is a little crazy. I always sort of, as I say, the price was a lot lower back then, but I always go back to the Tesla buy that sort of got everyone, got the bull run started basically, and that was $1 billion. So you're sort of getting that in 3 days, basically, or sort of essentially every 3 days, just from BlackRock ETFs. If you sort of take overall, last week at least, you're getting that within 2 days. So looking positive. And on the Ethereum side, we're still getting more inflows, sort of sporadic. You're having slightly smaller days. Friday was only 23 million. But yeah, you've had sort of a 273, 100, 150, 300. So yeah, here and there, Fidelity getting a reasonably nice day. So, but sort of less consistent than the Bitcoin side. There is, I guess, speculation that staking could be included in these sort of going forward, and that would probably increase these a great deal. So I hadn't really been covering MicroStrategy. I sort of had these tweets open on the browser and sort of forgot to include them the last few weeks. But MicroStrategy have been acquiring an enormous amount of Bitcoin. I think I noted this buy sort of from November the 18th, buying 51,780 Bitcoin. But yeah, the following week they bought another 55,000 on November, well, that week before then. November the 25th, and then following week another 15,000. So that's $1.5 billion worth and $2.1 billion worth this last Monday. And sort of, I think everyone's probably expecting maybe another buy announcement tomorrow to say that they've been buying. So this was 21,550 for $2.1 billion. Again, sort of going back to the Tesla buy, 1 billion. This is sort of 2 billion a week. So yeah, good amount of buying for MicroStrategy. They're now at 423,000, sort of 2%, pretty much right on 2% of the total supply. And yeah, obviously you've got Marathon and Riot and people like that diluting as well to acquire Bitcoin. So I sort of kind of call it trying to brute force the market up rather than letting people, organically invest in it. This is sort of selling convertible bonds to people that aren't really interested in the price of Bitcoin. I think a lot of people think that they're sort of taking a call option on MicroStrategy stock. That, from what I've seen, doesn't appear to be what they're doing. They're just sort of arbitraging the volatility of MicroStrategy, and they're essentially price neutral as far as Bitcoin price goes. They sort of make the same amount of money whether MicroStrategy goes up or down, unless it completely crashes and they have to sell the Bitcoin. But as long as the sort of position is healthy, then yeah, the convertible bond buyers, from what I understand, make about the same amount of money. I think it's probably fair to say they may have been, I guess, propping the market up a little bit from what may have been a correction, sort of getting to 100,000 fairly quickly. We could have maybe without all of this buying corrected down to 85, 80,000 sort of after the election, maybe with a sort of big wick down to 80,000, and sort of that essentially hasn't happened, I would have thought, because there is this much buying. Unless this buying causes sort of more selling of whales potentially. You get sort of whales like old programmers and people from back in 2011, 2010. They sort of tend to wait for big spurts of buying before selling. So yeah, maybe if this wasn't being done, then the whales wouldn't be selling. But yeah, I sort of call it brute forcing the market up, basically, buying Bitcoin with money that people are investing that don't really care about Bitcoin itself. Which, yeah, I think I would rather sort of institutions buying the ETF because they're bullish on Bitcoin, or sort of retail buying Bitcoin, and then, maybe this sort of thing being the top. But it seems like potentially we're going to get retail buying in much closer to the top, and yeah, it will have sort of gone up before then because of things like this. But I suppose for all of us that are in it, it is positive for price. What we're not getting just yet is tech companies investing their treasury into Bitcoin, or the sort of big tech companies at least. Microsoft, as expected, voted no to their sort of Bitcoin reserve additions. There was a vote, being put forward as to whether they should invest part of their cash balance into Bitcoin, and yeah, it sort of was fairly obvious that the board would recommend that this was a no vote, and then everyone just follows what the board recommends. When you get these sort of voting forms to fill out, it's sort of a big load of questions, and basically for all of them there's an option to say, would you like to vote for what the board recommends? And I think most people just do that. And certainly the proxy voters, you get BlackRock and people like that hold all of the ETF shares. They don't want to sort of rock the boat unless it's something that they vehemently disagree with, so they just tend to vote with what the board goes for. So yeah, Microsoft said they have strong and appropriate processes in place to manage and diversify its corporate treasury for the long-term benefit of shareholders. And while I suppose they admit the price may go up and shareholders would benefit, it's not sort of worth the risk, basically. This public assessment is unwarranted. So, yeah, you've got the same think tank basically submitting a similar proposal to Amazon. That's for their April 2025 shareholder meeting, so it's a little way away. So public opinion of Bitcoin may have changed by then, and they could potentially go for it. They're sort of saying consumer price inflation rate of 4.95% is fast eroding Amazon's 88 billion in cash and short-term equivalents. So, yeah, we're not getting it just yet, but we could be getting it in the future. It's in pretty good news as well. Companies that use Coinbase's sort of on-ramp feature, pay with Coinbase, can now use Apple Pay for that integration. They're saying requires no action from app developers and is currently live for all users. So they're making it quite seamless. I didn't realize Apple Pay is already supported by Binance, BitPay, MetaMask, and others, sort of companies that I wouldn't really have expected them to support, sort of Binance especially, being Chinese, although I guess Apple have an enormous market in China selling iPhones. But yeah, they're sort of offering free integration, free transactions on USDC for both crypto on and off ramping, access to more than 60 fiat currencies, over 100 crypto on more than 20 blockchains. So yeah, quite a large move forward, even if these others do already offer it. I would think integrating with Coinbase just sort of gives people that familiarity. Basically, you can buy on a sort of large publicly listed company and use Apple Pay the way you do for everything else. So this could be a move to sort of get more retail involved. And of course, we have more BlackRock news, possibly talking their own book because they own the largest Bitcoin ETF in IBIT, but they've released a report sort of titled the Sizing Bitcoin in Portfolios report on December the 12th. So the question sort of seems to be at the moment not whether you should hold Bitcoin, but how much Bitcoin you should hold. This is sort of, they're saying this applies to investors who wish to hold Bitcoin, but they are sort of basically suggesting that pretty much everyone should be. A 1 to 2% allocation poses on average the same share of overall portfolio risk as a typical allocation to the Mag 7. So yeah, that is maybe quite a large amount, sort of the amount that you hold in Apple, Facebook, Nvidia, and all of them being the same as your Bitcoin allocation. Some might see as a bit too much, but that's what BlackRock are saying is reasonable. So they're saying investors need to think about Bitcoin's expected returns in a different way. It has no underlying cash flows for estimating future returns. What matters is the extent of adoption because it is a network. Bitcoin may also provide a more diversified source of return. There's no intrinsic reason why Bitcoin should be correlated with major risk assets like sort of S&P and Nasdaq over the long term, given its value is driven by such distinct drivers. So they're sort of basically saying, while there might be a correlation with sort of risk assets, goes up and down with the Nasdaq. Some people call it a 2 or 3x levered Nasdaq alternative, basically. And BlackRock are saying there's no long-term reason why that should be the case. And a lot of sort of larger portfolio managers like an uncorrelated asset. So you've got bonds that are typically a negative correlated asset to stocks, and they're sort of saying Bitcoin would basically go up and down and do its own thing, which is sort of even more desirable potentially. As part of diversification, you have different assets sort of that go up at different times. They say in the longer term it could become less risky, may not have a structural catalyst for sizable price increases, And sort of at that time, investors may prefer to use it tactically to hedge against specific risks, like they do with gold. So, yeah, interesting. The sort of sizing Bitcoin in portfolios report. As I say, the question now is sort of not whether people should hold it; it's whether you should hold 1 to 2% or not, or more. They think obviously more is risky and would provide too much. It would sharply increase Bitcoin's share of the overall portfolio risk, but 1 to 2% is optimal. So as I say, it's been a bit of a negative week on the altcoins. Bitcoin is actually up 4%-ish. Solana is down 6%. It's not been performing too well sort of largely since the election, really, or since just after the election pump. Ethereum is down 1.2%. Chainlink is the outperformer. I think this is partly Trump's World Liberty Financial sort of buying a little bit, from what I understand, is sort of getting everyone involved again. Sort of being called a dino coin. I wouldn't quite call it that. It still does seem to have an awful lot of use in the system. Sort of whichever blockchain is going to do well. I haven't really sort of seen anything else come up instead of it, and sort of it dying away. I wouldn't say it's quite like some of these other dino coins being pumped. But yeah, that's up 14.6%. Gala down 16.5%. Quant down 16% as well. So these sort of coins that had done really well for sort of the last sort of month, sort of having a fair bit of a pullback. Audius 9.3%. Power Ledger 15.7%. ICP down 9.5%, VeChain down 13.7%, Basic Attention Token 14.6%, and Matic down 11.95%. So yeah, it's slight pullback for the dino coins, as we call them, and yeah, Bitcoin still looking pretty strong. Sort of considering if we get a reasonable move maybe this week, sort of the Santa rally, as people call it. If we get sort of a move towards 110,000 on Bitcoin, I probably will sell a reasonable amount, but we'll have to see. So yeah, leave your thoughts in the comments below, and like and subscribe. See you soon.